name's Paulina Reyes. I feel like it means like kind of bringing girls to the front. I feel like as a woman, like you're overshadowed all the time, and like being a riot girl means pulling yourself out of that, like out of that, I guess, mindset that you have to be quiet and you have to be submissive and you have to be, you can't take up too much space. I think it kind of pulls you out of that mindset. I seen the band Bikini Kill when I was like 15, like I heard about them, and I started looking into what they were about and what they do, and like I started getting into zines and stuff like that, and it just really started with Bikini Kill. And then I seen them live when I was like 17 for my birthday, and it just like really popped off onto this thing of like me being so inverse in like feminist theory and like just surrounding myself with people who are interested in the same stuff as that. I'd like to see more girl shows. It's a lot of like dudes in the scene just making bands, and it's a lot of like when you go to these shows, it's a lot of really aggressive men in the pit, like I don't want to see some like grown ass like cis dude in the pit fucking knocking me up in the face when it's like some like slow ass song. Like I want to see more girl shows, and I want to see like more girls up in the front. I want to see more girl only pits. I want to see more queer people making music. Like personally for me, I can't make music, so I shouldn't even be talking right now, but like I just admire when people can do that, and I wish that they'd put themselves out there more. I do a lot of art. I've been doing art since I was a kid, and I went into like AP art, and I've done art shows and stuff like that. Like I really like art. Originally, I wanted to be a tattoo artist. Fingers crossed, I might still do that. But it's just like a riot girl really inspires me to keep creating, because it's like I feel like the art that I have made. I did a gallery show about the sexualization of young girls, and I pinned a bunch of comments that I had received when I was 15 from guys on Kick. I had changed my name to something like subliminally sexual, like baby girl or something like that, and then I put my age in my bio. And then I went on an online chat room, and I let guys come and message me first. I never messaged anyone else first. Yeah. And guys told me the most disgusting, vile things that they do to me. And I took those messages and I pinned them on a board, and I put around it girls surrounded by things that spoil, to symbolize the way that women, they're seen that they have like kind of like a countdown. After 40 you're not really seen as attractive, but before the age of 18 you're already seen as a sexual object. So I put young girls around it, and then I forgot what I had put in, but I had put something like young girls are not spoiled, or like another thing to represent it was the fact that young women, once they lose their virginity, they're seen as spoiled. You need to bring other women up, because no one knows how hard it is to be a woman except for other women. So you as a woman, like, be nice. You know what I mean?
When I was in a band with some, it was only female. I was the lead singer. It wasn't a punk band per se, except for we did like have influences. Um, but there were times when we were going to go like play with another band, and they wouldn't speak to me, even though I had like started, my friend and I started a guy. But I was the lead singer, and I coordinated a lot of it, but they wouldn't. I was just the girl. And so it's like that Gwen Stefani song. But I was just a girl in the band to them. And not really the people that I was in the band with, but other bands. I was the just the girl singer. They didn't see me as a musician. But I didn't want to just be the girlfriend. I also wanted to be on stage. And so I did as much as I could to get on stage as much as possible. And I had other friends who were women who wanted to be on the stage. We didn't just want to be the girlfriend of the drummer. We wanted to be on the stage. And that going from one to the other was tricky, because they don't want to take you seriously. Even the men who I would consider to be progressive still saw it as it's a guy thing. It's a guy energy, but yet it's not really a guy energy. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, as a woman, I love punk music and I love that like angst of it, right? And as women, like we can really feel that rage, the same rage as they can, or the same like political, frustration as they do. But it was very dominated by men. And I think that a lot of women in Fresno tried to have their voice in there, but it's
Yeah.
not very many voices. I don't feel like there's a very strong punk um, movement in Fresno like it was in the 80s and 90s when I was there. It doesn't, it seems to have diminished somewhat. I think there's probably little pieces of it, but like some of the videos that I sent you and some of the bands that were playing, and not just punk, even like goth or ska. Let's Go Bowling was a huge band. There was a huge music scene in Fresno, and I think it's diminished. My son plays in he does like heavy metal, and that seems to be, and I've been to some of his shows, and that seems to be more, a little bit stronger right now. And he talks about like the punk scene, but I don't see many women in any of these shows.
Mhm.
I still don't see a lot of women. I don't see a lot of women bands. I don't know if Fresno's even ever had an all, maybe one. I had one friend, but they wouldn't have been, they were maybe more like The Cure, but they were all women. But I don't think Fresno's ever really had that. And I don't really know why, because there are women musicians in town who can play. And that's why I was really, Jocelyn, the bass player from Capital Punishment, I loved her and I really looked up to her because I had never really seen a woman bass player. And I thought she was a badass, and she just like, and I remember just sitting there in awe of her because I thought, you're doing what a lot of women want to do, or like Megan Maddox being a bass player, because a lot of times people think, oh, if you're a woman, you have to be the pretty lead singer, but you can't actually play one of the instruments. And it's really, so I always looked up to those women who were in those bands, who were, not just there to be the pretty one, but they were actually writing music and playing music. And I think that has a lot to do with how people see women. They just see women as singing, and they don't really think much of that. To really gain a male, in general, I'm generalizing, I apologize, but to get the respect of a man in a band, you have to either write the music or you have to play one of the instruments. It was interesting when I first, like I said, when I first came here, I think that I was rebellious in my own way, and I was drawn to that. That's why I was drawn to the Tower District. Um, and once I was there, I never left. Like that was my, I was there every day, and that was going to see bands. And because there was an artistic, there's the art, obviously the artistry, but also I really rejected, we used to joke that anything like like north of Shaw was where you don't, because there were like places that, I hate to generalize, but I'll just, okay. Um, when I was in school, there were a lot of like sororities and fraternities were a big deal. And they rejected people like me. In fact, my friend and I, who had different colored hair and were like all black, and they would make fun of us. It was, Fresno State, they would mock us. And so she and I would purposely sometimes go to, there was a club called Willikers, and it was north of Shaw. Okay. And it was where all the like sorority fraternity type people went, the people that rejected us, and to be honest, we sort of rejected them. And you had to be asked to dance by a guy, where when we would go dance in the tower, nobody, like, you could just do whatever you felt like it, you didn't have to wait. And so we would purposely, to annoy them, we would dance together, and it really bothered them, because like women had to be asked. It was still sort of like that in the 80s and 90s. So I never went anywhere north of Shaw. I stayed in the Tower District because I, there was, the things that we talked about or sang about or played about or were alerted to were very different from the other side, and it was more distinct when I was younger. You don't see it at Fresno State now, but when I was there, it was very distinct of who was whom, you know, like who these people and these people, and I was definitely one of these people, and so you were sort of ousted, and I think that that made us closer. We were a very close unit of people, whether I define myself as an only wore punk rock clothes, which I was more of a vintage girl, if that makes sense. I wore only vintage clothing and I went from place to place, and so did they. Like, one of my guys I dated was a bass player in that band Naked Aggression, but his best friend was in rockabilly, and we all partied together. There were certain houses in the Tower District that we all went to, certain places. And so even though we might have played different things, we all moved together because it was a small group of people and the rest of Fresno and Clovis was very different than we were. So it was very protected. And we're still friends, right? You know, um, if that makes any sense. So I identified, yes, with them, whether I dressed it or only listened to it or not, I did identify with them.
I like what the Riot Girls did in terms of focusing not on like the headlines or again like what is broadcasted, but you know the smaller dramas. I know they had a couple of like posters like we pasted around, kind of saying "fuck you" to like all the ways where you know kind of inheriting a life, like whether as a daughter or like just simply like as a girl or a woman, where you like have to live with a lot of this pain that like again you inherited, but a lot of like the viciousness or what I think is the cruelest part about like the patriarchy which they went against was like the invisibility or normalization of you know being catcalled. I know there were a couple of posters about that or zines, or like having to fit a standard and like that double standard that they were also like going against of like you know when you're pretty, you never really feel pretty, you just feel used and disposable and like you're menace. But if you don't fit that standard, because I know they were also touching on eating disorders, it's the same effect except it's just on the other end of the spectrum, so you can't really win. So being a riot girl I think is undoing that culture of silence, because I feel like a lot of that secrecy or hush hush culture is what keeps a lot of women, you know, down. So yeah, I think everything that I said is a very scholarly way of like saying that they're like super punk. Like you could definitely see a lot of the ways like women who don't even like who aren't even aware of the Riot Girl movement still embody like what the Riot Girls have done. So I honestly wouldn't even say like it extends to Fresno. It's like such an integral part of Fresno that just kind of like goes unnoticed because of like all of the work that they've put in, you know, in the 90s. I think for my job as a program coordinator with Youth Leadership Institute, specifically in Long Beach, I designed a program that you know is founded in a lot of like scholarship without the words like critical race theory or gender and sexuality theory. It's just like embedded like as a part of the program, and you know usually you have to adhere to like a lot of parameters or standards when you write an essay, which again goes against like the Riot Girl way of like just speaking, you know, without being censored, like you said. And so, like, the way that we're actually taking that scholarship and turning it into popular knowledge is that you kind of, you know, destroy those boundaries. And so, like, what got me into researching and, like, finding out about the history of the Riot Girls was, like, creating that zine.